Jonathan Luna. Jonathan Luna was a true success story. He grew up in the projects of the South Bronx near Yankee Stadium and went on to become a successful lawyer, husband, and a father to 2 children. He was a 38-year-old assistant United States attorney living in Baltimore, Maryland, when he was mysteriously found dead on December 4, 2003, in Pennsylvania. Luna left work at the courthouse around 11:30 p.m. on December 3rd, but instead of heading home, he ended up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Luna never mentioned to anyone that he would be leaving town before he left. Throughout the evening of December 3rd and into the morning of December 4th, Luna took a strange path, zigzagging through 4 states before arriving at the site of his death. He made an ATM withdrawal at 1 a.m. in Delaware, and he paid for road tolls with cash even though he had an EZ Pass in his car. At around 5:30 a.m. on December 4th, Luna's still-running car was seen hanging over an embankment and his body was discovered in the creek below. He had been stabbed 36 times with his own penknife and left to drown. At first, police thought that Luna's case was a homicide. Due to his work as a federal prosecutor, they thought maybe someone held a grudge against him and murdered him. But as authorities dug into Luna's background, the possibility of suicide came to the forefront. It was discovered that Luna had accumulated a good deal of credit card debt, and he had posted profiles on adult websites looking for female sex partners. So, was Luna murdered due to some circumstances surrounding his job, or did his life become so unmanageable and chaotic that he went to the extreme of stabbing himself to death? No one is certain, and the case remains unsolved to this day. Ottavio Botticcia. Ottavio Botticcia was a national hero in his native Italy when he died under mysterious circumstances in 1927. Not only had the 32-year-old Botticcia won the Tour de France, the most famous bicycle race in the world, in 1924 and 1925, he was also a decorated World War I veteran, endearing him to his fellow Italians even more. Botticcia was in France in May of 1927 when he was forced home because of a family tragedy. His brother Giovanni was hit by a car while cycling and killed. On his return to Italy, tragedy struck again. On June 3rd of 1927, shortly after he buried his brother, Botticcia was found unconscious on the side of the road near his hometown of Pianese. He left that morning to go cycling and was discovered by a farmer a short time later, having sustained a cracked skull and other broken bones. A priest was summoned and the cyclist was given his last rites. He was taken to a hospital where he died on June 14. Botticcia never regained consciousness. But who or what caused Botticcia's injuries? His bike was quite a distance away from him and had not been damaged. There were no skid marks to indicate a car accident. The whole scene did not make much sense to investigators or really to anyone. The authorities' official cause of death was sunstroke. There are several alternate theories. Some believed Botticcia may have been targeted by Mussolini's government because he was an outspoken socialist opposed to the Italian regime's fascist ideology. An Italian man dying of stab wounds in New York claimed he had killed Botticcia at the request of the mafia, and many years later the farmer who found Botticcia on the side of the road delivered a stunning deathbed confession saying, "I saw a man eating my grapes. He'd pushed through the vines and damaged them. I threw a rock to scare him, but it hit him. I ran to him and realized who it was. I panicked and dragged him to the roadside and left him. God forgive me." To this day, the case is still unsolved. The Oklahoma Girl Scouts. In April of 1977, a counselor at Camp Scott in Oklahoma realized her tent had been ransacked and her donuts were stolen. The counselor also found an ominous note in her tent warning that 3 girls would be murdered at the camp in the future. The counselor and her co-workers wrote the note off as a prank. A few months later, the worst nightmare came true. June 12th, 1977, was the first day of camp for Girl Scouts at Camp Scott. That night, a big thunderstorm roared through the area, and the scouts and the counselors hunkered down in their tents for the evening. The following morning, a counselor on her way to the camp showers made a grisly discovery. 3 Girl Scouts aged 8 to 10 years old were found brutally murdered in their sleeping bags. The bodies were placed on a path about 150 yards away from the tent they had been sleeping in. The police immediately had a suspect in mind, Jean Leroy Hart. the 34-year-old Hart had been on the run since escaping from jail in 1973. He had a long rap sheet, including kidnapping and rape, and he knew the area around Camp Scott very well. Authorities immediately began searching for Hart, but he eluded them for a whole year. Finally, in April of 1978, Hart was captured. It turned out that he had been hiding out in the area, moving from cave to cave in the woods. These caves yielded clues and evidence related to the Girl Scout murders, confirming to the police that Hart was their man. In the caves, police found sunglasses belonging to a Camp Scott counselor and a boot print matching one found at the scene of the crime. Even more damning, a chilling message was written on the wall in one of the caves. It read, "The killer was here. Bye bye fools. 17th of the 6th, 1977. The date in the message, June the 17th, was only 4 days after the 3 young girls were killed. Hart stood trial for the murders, but much to the outrage of local citizens, he was acquitted. However, because of his previous jailbreak and his earlier crimes, Hart was sent directly back to the penitentiary, where he died of a heart attack in 1979. The Phantom Killer. In the years after World War II, Texarkana found itself in the grip of a demented serial killer. Between February and May of 1946, a man stalked victims in Texarkana, murdering 5 and injuring 3. The youngest victim of the Phantom Killer's violence was only 15 years old, and the final victim was a 37-year-old man who was shot through a window while he was reading the newspaper in his house. Curfews were imposed in Texarkana, and terrified citizens guarded their homes with firearms. Police on either side of the state line hunted the elusive killer. Even the captain of the famous Texas Rangers, Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez, went to Texarkana, vowing to find the Phantom Killer. Unfortunately though, no one was ever caught or charged for any of the crimes that occurred in Texarkana in the spring of 1946. This case has stayed in the public eye for many years. The case was the basis for 2 films, both titled The Town That Dreaded Sundown, released in 1976 and in 2014. Historian and former reporter James Presley released a book in 2014 about the famous Unsolved case. Presley believes that the Phantom Killer was a man named Yoel Sweeney, a petty thief who was always a suspect in the murders, but never charged for the crimes. In fact, Sweeney's wife said that he was a Phantom Killer, but she then refused to testify against him in court. Sweeney was sent away to the penitentiary for other crimes from 1947 until his release in 1973. So do you think that Sweeney was the Phantom Killer, or were investigators on the wrong path the whole time? In this case, we'll probably never know. So that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Until the next video, goodbye.